I'm Doug. My FBI, my faith building incident, was when God embraced me. I was born in Bessemer General Hospital. It's long since been torn down. Raised in the Fairfield, Hueytown area. Went to Hueytown High School. I was one of 7 children. Only the next oldest, my sister, Barbara, and I were close. The rest of them were so much older than us, didn't really know them. Nothing harsh, nothing bad, just didn't know them. After high school, started at Jeff State, got my transferred to the University of Pittsburgh, going to play football up there. Did not like it. They made me take remedial grammar because of my southern accent. Got my draft notice, took it to the coach. Coach said, I'll handle it. And long story short, I enlisted in the Coast Guard. Thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Still ended up in Vietnam on a PBR, machine gunner on the bow. Came home from that, wasn't bummed out, drugged out. Just wanted to go see some of my buds that I'd served with. And so I bought an old motorcycle and off I went. Stayed gone a year and a half, saw all 48 states, lower half of Canada, a lot of Mexico, down in Central America. My dad got sick, had to come home. Had no intentions of being a police officer. Took the civil service test because a buddy of mine was going to take it, so I went and took it with him. Scored in the top 5, so ended up being a cop with Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. Affirmative action was very much in place, so my wife Cindy and I talked about, okay, where will, being a straight white male, where will you have at least a level playing field? We came up with nursing. So I went to nursing school, got my degree in nursing, have a degree in business administration, nursing, and went to the University of Alabama and finished my law enforcement work down there. I worked as a cop and a nurse most of my life in the Birmingham area, very often doing both jobs at the same time. When you got 4 kids, you do what you got to do. Tremendously rewarding. I've always enjoyed a work of service, helping other people, and being a police officer and being a nurse, there's your opportunity right there. The amazing thing to me about it is both jobs are more similar than what most people realize. If you're a nurse and you walk in the room, the first thing I had to get used to was telling people, no, I'm not the doctor. You know, the male nurse walks in the room and you're in scrubs, they think you're a doctor. No, stereotypes don't work. The other thing was, you know, if you walk in, they expect you to take control of the room, do what you're supposed to do with the patient. And it's the same thing with a police officer. Nobody calls the police if they won the lottery. It's always they've got a problem and you show up, you're expected to take control of the scene and do it. So the jobs are very similar in that, and how you treat people and the outcome is very focused on how you treat them, how you make decisions, and what those decisions are. We bought a farm down in Bibb County, Alabama to get out of Birmingham. Went down there, my wife made a deal with the local sheriff that he needed a weekend shift supervisor, and I would do that because I had time, because I was working Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in MICU at Baptist Princeton. So I worked both jobs another 10, 12 years. My charge nurse had a gentleman that was pursuing her and asked her to marry her. She said, well, and she and I were really close. Said, I'll marry you if Doug approves of it. So I looked at Cliff and said, you will meet me on the courthouse steps at 6 o'clock Saturday evening. You're going to ride patrol with me and we're going to get to know each other. Very reluctantly, he did. We became very, very good friends. And he said, why are you doing this? I said, 4 kids. Got to pay college. And he said, why don't you come to work for me in IT? I said, I don't know what IT is. What is it? And he said, well, come and sit in my office and see. It's information technology. You have a computer, don't you? I said, the kids do. So I did. I went to work and with him on a Monday, sat there and listened to what he was doing. And they were technical recruiters. And my only question to him is, you get paid for this, right? He said, yeah. So you get paid for talking on the phone all day? Yeah. Okay. He said, do it. Come on, try it. I said, well, let me take a leave of absence. So I did. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. We ended up acquiring the company from our parent company. The three of us over there did. We flipped the company and went to work for another company doing IT work. Not technical, but I know how to sell it. So that was it. Well, that led to government contracting, me coming to Huntsville. Been doing that for 20 years in the consulting role. God just opened up so many doors for me in that. It gives me time to still pursue my hobbies and earn more money than I ever thought I'd make. That said, I like to spend my time. My hobbies, naturally, none of them are cheap. Fishing, I love it. Motorcycles, I take 2 or 3 trips a year on my bikes. I used to fly a great deal, but now then the common sense part of me says, unless you're going to do that weekly, you're not that sharp anymore. So don't do that. Work around the house a good bit. I'm working more than I ever dreamed I would work at this point in my life. I wondered why God was keeping me in this business. Keep wondering why He kept me on this earth, to be blunt. But it was, I'm enjoying mentoring and helping other people. That is rewarding beyond anything I ever thought of. Cindy and I spend our time with the grandkids on the weekend. We used to travel a good bit and weekend trips, maybe long weekend, whatnot. I became a Christian. I think a lot of it was my peers growing up. I remember when I was 12 years old, walking home from school, I just decided to detour by the church and walked in, and pastor was there, and he knew who I was, which may or may not have been a good thing. And we talked about it, and I said, I really don't know why I came by. I said, I've just got this feeling. And we talked about it, we prayed about it, and I invited God into my life. I was baptized a few weeks later, and that started my journey as a Christian. And I have always attended church, a lot of it out of habit, some of it out of need. It satisfies a hunger. I get just as hungry to be with my church family and in my church as when I get up in the morning and it's time to eat breakfast. So it satisfies that. It's very, very rewarding to be a part of a church family. I mean, the church family can't get you to heaven, but it sure is nice to have a peer group that thinks the same way you do and can share and you go to in prayer. Before I accepted Jesus, I wasn't a bad kid, wasn't in trouble. May have been a little bit lazy on schoolwork. But the difference it made in me was I was more in tune with everything around me, earth, other people. I mean, it may sound crazy, but I was more in tune with nature. I've always loved hunting, being in the woods, and I could appreciate more of what God had given us, more of what was out there for us to enjoy, to understand that, goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Why was it there? It was to support Adam and Eve. And it was the same thing. Suddenly I had that realization of everything, and it stuck with me all those years. For me, being a Christian, it always meant that somebody was sitting right here, a moral conscience or whatever else. And I knew better than to do some things. Like my parents, if they were alive, they could tell you, never one time did they have to get me out of jail or did I come home drunk. I mean, it just wasn't me. Was I a little angel? Nope, not at all. But at the same time, I did participate in church. I went on a couple summer missionary trips in high school, going off to college in the service and different things. I grew away from all that. Definitely grew away from it. I always felt it. I always knew where I should be. I still didn't go out and commit murder, rape, or anything like that. But there's just a difference. Just because you're not a criminal doesn't mean you're a saint. And you've got to walk in that will. That to me is what being a Christian is. I know there's nothing that I can ask of God that He won't deliver. I know that no matter what my circumstances are, God is bigger than that. Everybody's wrapped around the axles about politics. Don't care. I quit watching the news. Why should I? God already knows the ending, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to go do what I'm supposed to do, take care of what I'm supposed to take care of. I had a spiritual awakening several years ago in the hospital. And then my renewed faith with this little church has just been off the charts. There's miracles around us every day. You're just not looking for them. I know what my God can do, and He is all powerful. And when I have a temptation, when I have something that I'm really struggling with, I turn it to God. I just stop what I'm doing. Lord, this is the situation. You know that. How about taking care of this? I can't take care of myself. I can't do this myself. Tell me what I should do, what you want me to do, and I'll get after it. But I need this off my back. It works. But it's simple. It's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. You have to have faith. My FBI of God embracing me was I was in the hospital. I'd gone in at around 265, 270 pounds. I won't go into a lot of details about it. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't my heart. It was just a hiatal hernia had gone bad, and the stomach came up through, and they had to rip me open. Had 14 surgeries. And if I take off my shirt at the beach, the kids think it's Frankenstein. And, it's okay. But anyway, I came out at 150 pounds. People I had known all my life would look at me and, what happened to you? You got cancer? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just lost a little weight. But after one of the many surgeries, Cindy, my wife, could tell you more about it than me, because I did a lot of drugs in the hospital, and thank you, I was glad to get them. Stayed in ICU a long time, but they'd moved me to a step-down unit. And because I was also a nurse, I always got the newest nurse on the floor. So I always put off my sheet changing and bath and everything till 11 to 7 shift, because it's quiet. They don't have as much to do. Like I said, they just ripped me stem to stern. So I was like 2 or 3 days post-op. I don't even remember. Anyway, I swung my feet off the bed so that I could go to the chair so she could change the sheets and then help me with my bath. Well, when I swung my feet off and stood up, it just ripped. Surgical incision. So went back on the bed, and let's just say that it was not a pretty sight. My family had already been told, I think, on 2 different occasions, if he makes it through the night, he should, maybe he'll make it through. And the doctor just said, okay, wrap it with, keep him still, just inject him with something that will knock him out, and we'll take care of it in the morning. And I may have that a little skewed because morphine and other fine drugs, but I do remember after all that, I was laying there, and it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. I was having a pity party. And let me tell you what, I can throw the best pity party on earth. I'm laying there thinking, oh great, my daughter is about to graduate Sanford. I'm not going to get to see that. I won't get to see any of my children marry, all these different things. I'm never going to get to fish again. I won't be able to take another motorcycle trip. Just me. Poor pitiful me. Not going to get to go do these things with Cindy. Not going to get to just go sit out in the woods at the farm. And just as real, just like I see you right now, and just like if you were to come up and embrace me right now, I felt God's embrace laying in that hospital bed. I felt His embrace, and I heard God speak to me. I've got you. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And that was it. And when I tell you that was it, that was it. I mean, unless you have had God embrace you and speak to you, you don't know. But when He does, you know. And I did. And I've never looked back. And since that day, I've had obstacles. I can't gain weight, but that's okay. It's been better on my joints, And it's just an absolute miracle. And that was one thing. I understood God's grace. I understood His love for me. I understood that He wasn't done with me. Didn't know what that meant. You know, I've wondered so many times, why did you keep me here? I wanted to go home. But it was real simple. He wasn't done with me. And one of the greatest examples of grace that I've ever seen came when I was a police officer. And it kept messing with me through my whole life. I never could comprehend how somebody could have so much grace and love through God, even though I was a Christian. But one Friday night in Birmingham, I had occasion to engage with a young black man, and he ended up dead from that. We got a call, where most police incidents start, about a car coming out of Bessemer, Alabama, up the superhighway, just flying, running 80, 90 miles an hour in a 45 zone. It's a 4-lane highway with a divider. Your training takes over. As you probably well know from your experiences, these things, it becomes automatic. Your situational awareness. You know, and this was my beat. I knew this area. I knew where my congestion was. I knew what should be going on, 2 miles up the road. I knew I had to catch him before we got over into the 5 Points West area. A lot of shoppers going over there, a lot of people in the crosswalk, traffic just really, really thick. And I knew, there was no doubt in my mind, at the speeds he was running, he was going to get into that traffic or in that congested area before he knew where he was or what he was doing, and he had to be stopped. It was just as simple. I was not willing to take the risk to allow him to hurt other people, regardless of what his intentions were or what triggered this. That's what you do. You protect people. And sometimes by protecting people, you have to eliminate the threat. And in my mind, that was the only clear choice. And the units that were responding to me, one of them said, "Hey, I'm sorry I'm so late," but he was 2 miles up the road from the direction this young man was heading, and he couldn't get through traffic with lights and sirens. So you can imagine, and when I pulled up beside him, we were running 90 miles an hour. That he ran slap over me almost. Well, I fell in behind him, and we're taking off, and we're headed into downtown Birmingham. It was a Friday evening. I knew the traffic where we were going into was highly congested. I knew that it was going to go real bad. 16 years old. I didn't know it at the time. I knew he was young. But he had just got his driver's license a couple of weeks back, and that was the first time his parents had let him have the car to go out. Oh, he obviously did not know how to drive at those speeds, but he was. So it was real simple. I had to use the pit maneuver where you take him out with your car. So I literally brought my car up, was able to get to his bumper and hit him and swing him. His car just started rolling, hit a telephone pole about 10 feet up, cut the telephone pole in two, cut the car in two, and killed him instantly. And any way you go about it, it was no less me taking his life than I'd put a gun to his head. But when you become a police officer, that there could be potentially bad times. Well, I guess it was the following week. My lieutenant called me in, said, "Come by the station." The lieutenant met me in the squad room and said, "Keep an open mind. Don't freak out. Don't get mad. Don't do anything like that. But the family of that young black man's here to talk to you." And I walked in there, and his parents, they were in their 60s. And I walked over and introduced myself. They stood up and they said, "We just want you to know we don't hold you responsible for that. That was God's will. Our son was not where he was supposed to be. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. And it's not your fault. And we forgive you that you had to be the one that did this." And I was dumbfounded. I was floored. Then the next thing that happened is they said, "We'd like to pray with you." And I absolutely love for you. Let's do this. The whole family embraced me, and we all prayed. Told them I'm sorry. You'll never know how much I regret it. I had been involved in combat in Vietnam, and I know there were some casualties there that I inflicted. Totally different. This was one-on-one. Okay, and this family showed me so much grace and compassion. Keep in mind, this was a time in Birmingham, Alabama, when race relations were not great. Because his family showed me grace, and because they did not hold me responsible, and because of their prayers and their relationship with God, I was able to move on. I was able not to dwell on that. I was able to say, okay, God, you had a reason for this. I don't know what it is. Who else did that affect? The grace that family showed me finally came home to me that night in the hospital, when God extended his grace to me, because I knew that I hadn't been living at the foot of the cross. I wasn't doing anything wrong, bad, horrible. But if you're not living for God and that's not your focus each day, then it should be. And I wasn't there. And that's when God's grace came to me. I told the doctor that the next morning about that. He said, it ain't the first time it's happened in this hospital, and it's not going to be the last, but I'm glad it came to you. I'm glad God came to you. And that was it. That changed my life and perspective 100%. We never found out why. We know that he was in Bessemer with a bunch of his friends. They were all hanging out down there. And for whatever reason, next thing anybody knows about him is we're getting calls over the radio that he's speeding up the Bessemer Superhighway. We still to this day don't know. As a police officer, yeah, you can always talk to some of your other officers. Quite literally, they're the only ones that can understand, because they're probably the only ones that have either had to go through that or have thought about having to go through it or see the end results of that. One of the officers, Mangina, came up to me. He was one that couldn't get there, and he said, wow. He said, I've always dreaded something like this, me being put in the position to have to make that decision. One of the Lieutenant Phillips was on duty that night, and he said, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'll be okay. He understood it. People wonder why cops, and I know a lot of people don't like to be called cops, but that's what we are. Yeah, what we were. They're the only other ones that can understand it. It's the same thing with a soldier. All these soldiers coming back from war with PTSD, and their spouse don't understand why they can't sleep at night. Why they can't get focused or what's going on. Only another soldier or sailor or airman can understand that. And it's the same way with the police officer. Only they can understand, especially in this day and time. You see officers on trial all the time. Unfortunately, the media, people at home, and attorneys have weeks, months, years to look at what the officer's decision was. That officer only had a split second. A split second. Most people need to understand, for law enforcement, it's not an easy job. Listen, the biggest thing somebody could have done to help me post-Vietnam, post that incident there, is just to listen. Don't push, don't apply pressure. Let them know that you're praying for them. Ask them if you can pray with them. Don't force anything on them. That's not a good ending for anybody. That is the single biggest thing that somebody could have done for me. And maybe share a couple of officers shared their experience when they had to do something similar. And you figure out, hey, I'm not alone. And you figure out other people have gone through this. The single biggest thing is I know God's got my back. I know that God is there to listen to me, that God is going to give me instruction. A lot of times that instruction comes from my daily Bible reading. And so many days, when I'm dealing with something, whatever it may be, if I will be still, humble myself, pray and ask God to show me, and I'll just start reading, the answer will come. It's called faith for a reason. So if you're going through a difficult time, or you're somebody in your family and you're trying to help them, or a friend, or somebody that you do business with frequently, it's called faith for a reason. You get in your car and you leave here. Before you go 5 miles, you're going to drive over a bridge of some nature. And it's going over a body of water in all likelihood. You don't even think about it. You drive across the bridge. Why? You have faith that bridge is going to hold you up. You don't think about it. It's the same way with this other. Quit thinking about it. Quit overthinking it. Let your faith take care of it. Have faith in God. Just know that God's faith and grace is sufficient for any problem you got. The way I share my faith right now is, in a mentorship that I'm involved in right now. A very bright young lady from China. She was raised in China, got her bachelor's degree in Vladivostok, Russia. I hope I'm saying that right. Then came over here to UAH and got her master's degree and was working as a translator at space camp. Probably one of the most ethical, moral people I've ever met. Fantastic young lady. She's not a Christian. They had done away with most of the churches over there as she was growing up. And she was, all through her childhood and into school, there was no mention of faith. It was the CCP. That's where your faith was. So, I've asked her a couple of times, well, tell me about your faith. She said, I know y'all believe in Jesus, God, whatever. I said, you don't. Well, I'm not saying he doesn't exist, but anyway, so, no, really I don't. I said, it's good for y'all. And she didn't say any of it in a harsh, hateful way. My question was, okay, understand that I care enough about you that I don't want to see you spend your eternity in hell. So that's one thing that it's an ongoing ministry. Then another gentleman I work with, he's going through some hard times. And he and I talk every other day. I never miss an opportunity to tell somebody, be it our waiter, waitress, clerk at the store, whatever, how's your day going? You having a good day? And hey, do me a favor, don't forget, Jesus loves you, and if you ever need to talk, he's willing to listen. And then I try to stay busy at church, doing whatever I can to support the ministry.
Penn Jillette said something that was so convicting. He said, how much do you have to hate somebody to believe everlasting life is possible and not tell them that? Wow. 150,000 people die every day. You've had issues. My husband had a heart attack 2 years ago. His heart stopped. That could have been his last day on this earth. So if today is your very last day, are you 100% sure that you would be with God in heaven?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My home is not here.
The good person test. That's right out of the Bible, of when the rich young ruler goes to Jesus and says, good master, what must I do to be saved? And he said, why do you call me good? There is none good but God.
No, I'll fail.
Well, all I ask is that you be honest.
Okay.
How many lies have you told in your life?
Oh, you ain't got enough time and space left on this earth for me to tell you.
Okay, so what do you call people who lie?
Liars.
So what are you?
I'm a liar.
Okay, have you ever stolen anything, no matter how small the value?
No.
Have you ever taken the name of God in vain?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and in the Old Testament, in the Bible, that's called blasphemy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Old Testament, it was so serious it was punishable by death. Do you love your mom?
Yes.
Would you ever use her name in vain?
Oh, no, never would.
And why is that?
Respected my mother that much.
And you love her.
Yeah.
And yet
absolutely.
we use God's name in vain. And he gave us mothers. He gave us life.
Yes.
So the last one we'll talk about today, have you ever looked with lust?
Absolutely.
Okay, and Jesus says in the Bible, if you look with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart.
Yes.
So I'm not judging you at all, but you've admitted that you're a liar, a blasphemer, and an adulterer at heart.
Yes.
So when you're standing before a holy God, whose standard is perfection, are you innocent or guilty?
I'm guilty.
Heaven or hell?
Hell.
Okay, does that concern you?
Not a bit.
Okay, so what did God do so that all of us guilty sinners don't have to be in his prison called hell, but can be with him in heaven?
I know when I'm standing before God and I'm facing judgment, I know seated to his right is Jesus Christ. And I know that Jesus is going to say, he's mine. He's forgiven. He's washed in the blood.
And a lot of people know that Jesus died on a cross, but they don't make the connection that we sinned. Jesus came, lived a perfect life, was crucified on the cross. He paid our fine.
Yes.
So when he died, right before he dismissed his spirit, because it was his choice to die, he said, it is finished. It means it's done.
Yeah.
It's completed. It's paid in full.
Yes.
So all we have to do is to repent and trust in Jesus. And then we have assurance of our eternity with God. It's like being in a court of law. You have somebody that comes in and says, hey, I admit it. I did it. I'm guilty. And you and I both with law enforcement, we get that.
Mm-hmm.
So the judge throw the book at him. But Jesus comes in and says, no, he's mine. I paid the fine for him so that he can walk.
That's right.
And another analogy is if you're 10,000 feet up in a plane and you know you have to jump, there are a lot of people in this world, they're going to say, I'm a good person. I don't need anything. I'm going to flap my arms and I'm going to be fine, because they don't believe in gravity and they won't listen to anyone or get help. And what we as Christians need to do is say, wait a minute, you're going to die if you do that. Why don't you put on a parachute and then you're going to have a safe landing? And in the Bible, it says, put on the Lord Jesus Christ. So if we put him on like a parachute, when we make that jump into eternity, we can be with God in heaven.
The simplest thing to leave somebody with on this is John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Whosoever believeth shall not perish but have everlasting life. Take a step further and read John 3:17. It's easy, people. It's just quit being stubborn, quit being selfish, give up yourself and accept eternal life.